Welcome back to another fantastic video. This video is going to focus on the plans and compromises that were made at the Constitutional Convention. So just to recap, the Annapolis Convention, which met in the summer, late summer, like September-ish of 1786, the goal of that convention was to meet to try to resolve issues that were surrounding interstate commerce. So commerce that went back and forth between the states. So they're trying to fix that situation. And one of the things that they talked about was that they might need a stronger federal government. Maybe it might be time to revise the way that the Articles of Confederation was set up. So they decided to meet again the following summer. They met between May and September of 1787. And the initial goal, and this is important to remember, the initial goal of the Constitutional Convention was to revise the Articles of Confederation. Okay, to revise, to change it, to make additions and make it better, right? So the initial goal was not to totally scrap the articles and try again, but we all know that's what ended up happening. So the Constitutional Convention was actually held in Philadelphia. So at the time of the convention, so back in 1787, it wasn't actually called the Constitutional Convention. It was called the Philadelphia Convention. Okay. So lots of different plans and compromises were proposed, eventually leading us to our Constitution. So the first one is the Virginia Plan. And the Virginia Plan, a couple of things you need to know, was proposed by a guy named James Madison. You may have heard of him. James Madison was from Virginia. Virginia, at the time of the Constitutional Convention, was a very, very largely populated state. Okay. So James Madison's plan was dealing specifically with how the legislative branch of the new federal government was going to be set up. So James Madison said that we needed a bicameral legislature, which means two chambers. There were two houses. Okay. And in both of these houses, states would be represented. So they would get representation in these houses based on their population. Okay. One easy way I try to share to remember this is Virginia Plan, rep on pop, representation based on population. Okay. So obviously, this is going to benefit states with larger populations. Now, if you are New Jersey, who is a much smaller state in population, you're not going to like this plan. You think it's terrible. You think it's designed only to benefit larger states, only to benefit thinking of Virginia, only going to benefit slave states. So the Virginia Plan was proposed by this guy named William Patterson. And William Patterson believed that every state should be represented equally in the legislative branch. Okay. So it was proposed by William Patterson, called for equal representation. So every state gets the same number of representation, no matter their size. And he also thought a unicameral legislature would be the best system or the best form for the legislative branch. So in true Constitutional Convention style, I like to say the theme of the Constitutional Convention was compromise, because everything had to have a compromise, right? So the Connecticut Compromise was formed. Now, sometimes this is called the Great Compromise, doesn't matter, whatever you want to call it. But the Connecticut Compromise took parts from both the Virginia Plan and the New Jersey Plan. It took from the Virginia Plan the idea that we should have a bicameral legislature. Okay, so two houses. And it also took the idea that we should have representation based on population, but only in one house. So the House of Representatives, as we know it today, has representation based on population. And in the other house, the representation would be equal. So it doesn't matter how big or small your state is, you're going to have the same amount of representation. So that's what we have today in the Senate. The other big compromise that was made was about the issue of slavery. Okay. So there was lots of back and forth at this time. What do we do about slavery? Do we get rid of slavery? Do we make everyone have slavery? Like, what do we do? So instead of making a firm decision, our founding fathers kicked the slavery can down the road for a little while, and they came up with the 3/5 compromise, which basically means that slaveholding states can count 3/5 of their enslaved population for representation and taxation purposes. Okay. So if you are a slave state, then you could count 3/5 of your enslaved population. And with that, I will end this video. If you guys have any questions, let me know.